A tree kept following me around. I first saw it when I was 8 years old. It was late in the afternoon and I was playing in the woods behind my grandmother's house. She lived in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by sprawling forests, and I hated every minute of my summer visits. She was a kind old lady, but always distant. Whenever I lazed around the house, she'd tell me, "Go outside and play." One cool day, I wandered farther than usual into the woods. I was throwing rocks at a bird when a rabbit darted past my view. I chased it, watching it dart and weave through the trees. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. The air felt heavy, so heavy it sat in my chest. The rabbit juked sharply and ran across a clearing, and that's when I saw it. It stood in the middle of the clearing, blackened and gnarled, like it had been struck by lightning but refused to fall. The bark was split and cracked, with strange knots that looked almost like faces if you stared too long. The branches twisted outward, like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. A tree. I froze, unsure of why it scared me. It was just a tree, but something about it felt off. "Greg!" my grandmother's voice called out, startling me. "Come inside, it's getting dark." She had a trumpet for a voice, and I whipped my head around so fast it almost came off. I ran home. Just before I left the clearing, I turned to get one last look at the tree. It must have been a trick of the light, or maybe I was looking in the wrong place, but it was gone. I didn't tell anyone about it. What was I supposed to say? That a tree disappeared? Even as a kid, I knew how crazy that sounded. But after that day, I kept seeing it. Sometimes it was in the woods, sometimes in the fields, sometimes along the side of the road when my parents drove me home. It was never close, never in the same spot, but always the same tree, blackened, twisted, and impossible to forget. By the time I turned 12, I convinced myself it was a recurring dream, a trick in my mind. The sighting stopped as I got older. I'm 36 now, married, stable job, decent life. My wife, Ellen, says I overthink everything, and she's probably right. That's why I didn't tell her about the tree when it showed up again. I was walking to my car after work, the late shift at the hardware store. The parking lot was empty, except for the streetlights buzzing overhead. I left my lunchbox on the car's roof and opened the door. As I reached for it, I saw it, standing at the edge of the lot, partially obscured by shadows. My heart stopped. It looked exactly the same as it had 20 years ago. Twisted, charred, watching. I blinked and rubbed my eyes and it was gone. For weeks I told myself it wasn't real. Work stress, lack of sleep, there had to be an explanation. But the appearances became more frequent. Not every day, not even every week, but enough to leave me on edge. Sometimes in the distance, other times much closer. One day I saw it outside the window of a cafe where Ellen and I were having breakfast. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing the way I froze mid-bite. Nothing," I lied, forcing a smile. But it wasn't nothing. It followed me through the years. It was there on the day Ellen and I moved into our first house, standing at the edge of the yard as we unloaded boxes. It was there the night our son Sam was born. I spotted it in the hospital parking lot when I went outside for air. It was there at my father's funeral, a dark silhouette against the gray sky. I tried ignoring it, pretending it didn't exist. But the more I ignored it, the closer it seemed to get. One night, I broke down and told Ellen about it. "It's a tree," I said, pacing the living room. "I don't know how to explain it, but it's been following me my whole life." She stared at me for a long moment before sighing. "Greg, you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you should talk to someone." "I'm not crazy," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "I didn't say you were," she said softly, her eyes full of concern. But I could tell she didn't believe me. I slept on the couch that night. One evening, I called my friend Sean to grab a few drinks. He was my oldest friend, the kind of guy who could make you laugh even when everything felt like it was falling apart. "Greg," he said, slurring slightly after a few too many. "You've been weird tonight. What's going on?" I debated whether to tell him, but the liquor loosened my tongue. "There's this tree," I began. "I know it sounds insane, but it's been following me since I was a kid." Sean laughed. "A tree? Like it's stalking you?" "I'm serious, Sean. I see it everywhere. It's real." "Alright, show me," he said, waving a hand. "It only appears sometimes, man. You don't understand." Sean laughed again, but when we turned the corner, we saw it standing under a streetlight. Sean stopped laughing. "What the hell?" Do you see it? I asked, my voice shaking. Yeah, he said slowly, taking a step forward. That's creepy. Don't go near it, I warned, but he didn't listen. He walked up to the tree, reaching out to touch its bark. As soon as his hand made contact, the air seemed to shift. The branches creaked, and Sean stumbled back, clutching his chest. Sean! I shouted, rushing to him. He didn't respond. He collapsed to the ground, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. I looked up at the tree. It hadn't moved, but I swear I felt it watching me. I moved my family across the country after that. I wanted to believe I could escape it, leave it behind. But it followed me. It always followed me. Years passed. Sam grew up, went to college. Ellen and I got older, slower. But every time I saw the tree, I felt like that kid in the clearing again. By the time I was in my 60s, it had stopped hiding. Stood outside my window every night, a silent reminder that it would never leave me. One cold autumn evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked outside and stood in front of it. The wind was still, the air sharp in my lungs. What do you want? I whispered. The branches creaked, but the tree didn't answer. I reached out, my hand trembling as I touched the bark. It was cold and rough, like stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of memories flooded my mind. Every moment I'd seen the tree, every time I tried to forget it. And something else too. A presence, ancient and vast. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't kind. It simply was. It had been with me my whole life, not as a threat, but as a witness. A silent, unyielding shadow, tied to me in a way I couldn't explain. When I pulled my hand away, I felt an odd sense of peace. The tree didn't move, didn't follow me back inside. It just stood there, as it always had, watching, waiting. And for the first time, I let it. And that was A Tree Kept Following Me Around by Spiritual Pizza 1491. Wow, you've been alive a long time. So, I love this story because it immediately made me think of like an ent, right? Some kind of a tree entity, person, creature thing. But the story didn't go in that kind of direction that I thought it would. It was a little more... I can't really find the right word. It really surprised me, right? Because, so, for some reason, there's this tree, which, for some reason, maybe it's the only tree of its kind, that's potentially following the person. But then it makes you wonder if other trees follow other people, right? But let's not get too bogged down in certain details. Let's focus on this one tree, which looks like it's been struck by lightning. It's quite blackened and gnarled and crazy and creepy. Maybe like looking kind of like a dead tree in a way, right? Which I think is a great description. So it's a very unique looking tree compared to the trees around it. But has it followed somebody before? Right? Because they describe it as almost like a witness. Not really a good spirit, not really a bad spirit, just a spirit that watches. Can ents be voyeurs? That's kind of creepy. I don't really want to think about Treebeard watching me live my life. That's when you think of it like that, it doesn't sound good. But it is interesting. It's weird because, well, I suppose then it makes you think of like other immortal creatures, right? Like vampires, for example, and how they outlive people around them. And I guess in a way they're witnessing life move on. But in this case, it's specifically attached to one person, which is a little more bizarre when it comes to that. Is it like picking a victim? Is it perhaps going to turn this person into a different tree, perhaps? I don't know. I don't quite understand all the aspects of it. It does make this person seem insane, which is classic. It's very classic. I mean, I know if I felt like I was being followed by a tree for the majority of my life, I would probably also sound crazy too. I'd probably also take pictures and videos of it and, you know, kind of prove that it moves and stuff. I feel like I would delve a little bit further into it, you know? And I'd also probably try to, like, burn it down. I feel like I would try other things with it, right? It opens up an interesting potential. Which none of that really happened in here. It was just the fact that this guy noticed the troops following him, and it made him feel like he was crazy. But he kept living his life regardless. Why did he kill his friend? That I found to be weird. But not him. Is that a choice? I don't know. I don't know, it's another one of those stories that makes you raise questions, right? And I love that kind of thing. I love that kind of thing about a story. It's just something that should be thought-provoking. It should make you think, because the more you think about it, the more questions you have. And it might be frustrating not to have the answers, but at the same time, it can lead you down some very interesting rabbit holes of information, you know? And so for that reason, I've really enjoyed this story. Thank you so much, Spiritual Pizza, for this opportunity. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it, and I sure hope you guys at home have too. Let me know your thoughts down below, because I found this to be just strange. What do you think it is? What do you think it is? I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear your opinions. We will catch you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you to the YouTube and Patreon members who've been supporting this channel so far. This has been a fantastic effort. Thank you so much. I couldn't do any of this without your support. Really. I really can't. Thank you. You can also show support through a donation at coffee.com/nateatnight, or whenever I'm live streaming through super chats of YouTube or through Twitch. And whenever you donate, I'll be sure to read your messages out on stream.